Shabbat Shalom. As many of you know, the two news sources I read every morning when I wake up are the Huffington Post and the Jerusalem Post. Like all news sources, I often grow tired of the repetitive headlines, which seem to build like a wave across months and months, and the stories don't change whatsoever. And it's for this reason that I often find myself immediately scrolling down below to the lesser known articles, to the lesser known topics on each website. And it's one of these articles that caught my attention on Wednesday morning. I'd already begun my Thanksgiving vacation in my mind. I was in the spirit of gratitude and family and blessing. And I saw the Jerusalem Post article titled, "Victim of Jerusalem Terror Attack Dies After 6 Years in Hospital," written by Udi Shaham. In it, the article tells the story of Hodaya Nechama Asulin, who was critically injured in 2011 when she was 14 years old during a Palestinian terror attack at a bus station in Jerusalem across from Binyanei Ha'umah, the International Convention Center, where I attended the World Zionist Congress in 2015. A bomb exploded, and in 2011, it was reported that a British woman named Mary Jean Gardner was killed, and dozens of others were injured. Unfortunately, we often don't follow or pay attention to the dozens who are injured in a news story. Hodaya Nechama Asulin was one of those injured. She was rushed to Hadassah Hospital in Jerusalem, where she lived in a coma every day since that day. After 6 years of fighting for her life, she died this week. It struck me that the entire world moved past that particular 2011 bombing. After reading the article, I considered how I began attending rabbinical school in 2011. I moved to Israel for my year of study with my family since that moment in 2011. We returned. And amidst all of those news, all those headlines, there was an entire wave of terrorist stabbing attacks in Jerusalem that has already begun and ended since that bombing in 2011. I attended the World Zionist Congress, like I mentioned, in 2015, during that wave of stabbings, and walked past that bus station across the street from the convention hall many times a day and never paid attention in the least. I was ordained and became a rabbi since that bombing in 2011. I came here to Adat Shalom since that moment, and we've enjoyed so much goodness together since that bombing in 2011. And I began to think, do you know who hasn't been able to move past that bombing in 2011? Hodaya for one, her family for another, her friends, her doctors and nurses, and all the caregivers at Hadassah Hospital. There's a midrash about this week's parsha, after Jacob wakes up from his famous ladder dream. The Torah tells us that he becomes frightened, and he says the famous words, "Ma norah hamakom hazeh, ein zeh ki im beit Elohim v'zeh sha'ar hashamayim." Jacob says, how awesome is this place? This is none other than the house of God, and this is the gate of heaven. But the Midrash from Sifrei Devarim picks up on the intricate usage of the language in that sentence and reads into the entire line. The Midrash uses the line to create a narrative in which Jacob looks at the place on which he lies, traditionally understood to be Mount Moriah, the Temple Mount, and Jacob sees a vision of Solomon's holy temple standing there where he had just slept. Jacob exclaims, "How awesome is this place?" Then Jacob watches the Babylonians come and destroy the temple. And he continues with his line that says, this is no more. Ein zeh. And he sees it rebuilt again after our return from Babylonia. And he finishes by saying, this is the house of God, and this is the gate of heaven. According to the Midrash, Jacob sees the big picture. He watches the now and the future and the distant future play out before his eyes. And in spite of the destruction, Jacob decides to continue down his path, down his journey that he was intending in that moment. It's easy to just live life in the moment without remembering any kind of big picture of what happened before us or what is about to happen immediately following. It's easy to celebrate and say blessings without knowing that others, even in our own family, our extended family, are suffering tremendously. But I think the Midrash wants us to understand that it's precisely at the wonderful moments of ecstatic revelation, just as Jacob had when he woke up from the dream, when God appears and we see the angels on the ladder. It's precisely at that moment when we have to remind ourselves to be empathetic, when we have to open ourselves up to others, when we have to understand others, especially in our own family, who are grieving painful loss. One of the things I'm most grateful for this Thanksgiving is the way the last 6 years of my life has played out. And during that entire time, I'm sorry to say, I didn't think of Hodaya even once while she laid in that hospital bed. As I've said many times from this bima, Israel cannot be a museum. We can't only care about the Kotel. Israel is not a place to go for escape like Mexico. We can't only read about hotels and good restaurants, of which there are many. Israel is our family. This week, it's established that we are B'nai Yisrael. We are the children of Israel. We are the children of Jacob. Because he could see offerings and thanks, offerings of celebration, and at the same time, he could recognize heartache and suffering. I genuinely hope we all had a wonderful, wonderful Thanksgiving. And I genuinely hope today of all days, we all feel the pain of the Asulin family. They buried Hodaya on Wednesday. May the Asulin family be comforted amongst the rest of the mourners of Zion in Jerusalem. And may the memory of Hodaya Nechama Asulin be a blessing for her family and for all of Klal Yisrael. And let us all say, Amen.